You are listening to Woodland Walks, a podcast for the Woodland Trust, presented by Adam Shaw. We protect and plant trees for people, for wildlife.
I'm off to see television historian Dan Snow, who's guiding me around one of his favourite woods. Now, he doesn't look like you might expect a historian to look like. He's rather dashing and adventurous looking and very much in keeping with all of that. He's told me where to meet him, but not with something useful like the name of the place. We are meeting at latitude 50 degrees 52. Oh, I can't even read it. Gosh, how am I going to find it? Latitude 50, 52, 10 north, longitude 1, 37, 15 west. I hope I said that right. But my sat-nav does not find that place. So the first problem is even finding it. Anyway, here's hoping. Whilst I'm driving along, let me just tell you a bit about Dan Snow. In fact, all I know about Dan Snow. He is the youngest son of Peter Snow, the BBC journalist who used to do the swingometer, amongst other things. That was the general election when he presented Newsnight. And, to be honest, I copied lots of my television techniques from working lunch from Peter Snow. I knew that. What I didn't realise is he is also the great-great-grandson of the British Prime Minister David Lloyd George. So, not only a man who talks about history, but embedded in the history of this country as well. Well, I've come off the road onto a track here on the outskirts of the New Forest. And what do I find but the famous New Forest ponies that are blocking the path? And I don't really know the etiquette, to be honest. It's just staring at me, very unfazed by the fact that I'm here. And I think I'll just have to wait until he or she decides to move off. So, yes. Oh, look, he's going, so I can move on. I thought I might be stuck here for a long time. Off we go. Right, the terrible thing is, I think I've found where it's meant to be, but at this latitude and longitude, my phone doesn't work. So I can't text him to tell him I'm here, so I'm actually going to have to leave where I think it is and go back to where I can get a signal and text him and then come back. It is entirely possible I am never going to meet the famous and wonderful Dan Snow. In which case, this will be a wasted journey and I'll be terribly, terribly embarrassed. But I've got to get back in the car and drive to where I can get a signal and text him. Okay, I am here and I can see Dan Snow. So we're in the right place. I am in the right place. And we're going on for a very exciting walk. So tell me why are we in the New Forest? So I offered you any forest in the world, but you chose the New Forest. So why is this place special or different for you?
So I've chosen this forest because it is one of my favourite in the UK. I used to come here a lot when I was a kid. When you, in that kind of Proustian way, as you get a bit older, you start thinking back on those happy memories, the happy places of your childhood. I spent my 20s obviously doing anything I could to get away from those places and flying around the world, thinking it was the most glamorous thing ever. And now I love coming back to places where I was so happy and so privileged to grow up. And we used to drive out of southwest London, and we used to so Surrey and East Berkshire and North Hampshire and even into the New Forest. That was our kind of and bits of West Sussex. That was our weekend stomping ground. And we used to come here a lot. We used to sail on the Beaulieu River in the summer, and in the winter we just hike through these exact woods where we're at now, and then pub lunches, and then pile back into our minging Renault whatever car, and with everything tied to the roof, like all 5 kids in the back basically, and then listen to kind of classical music and all drift off to sleep on the M3 going back into London.
Wow.
And then more recently, just going through this gate here, more recently I've moved quite nearby, but also New Forest is a wonderful place for history, and I go on lots of sort of historical walks through here. There's still trees you can see here that Henry VIII would have seen. Still big oak trees. So there's a lot of history, a lot of lovely history here as well. So it combines two of my passions really, nature, trees and then history.
It is amazing, isn't it? I often have to remind myself that you can find trees which are 2,000 years old, that, you know, people may have sat under and talked about Jesus, this bloke called Jesus. Or people, you know, sitting under a tree in the UK way, talking about 1066 invasions, and it is extraordinary.
The tree in Windsor Great, there's an oak tree in Windsor Great Park, which is 1,000 years old, absolutely. So I would have seen William the Conqueror. There's a door in Westminster Abbey, which is they think it's the oldest bit of the Abbey. It dates back actually from the Saxon Abbey, they think. So the timber could have been cut from an oak tree. You know, it could have been timber that was few hundred years old in the 1060s, and therefore conceivably could have been a sapling when the Romans left Britain. So that's one I like to go and touch it. I like to touch that door a bit. So yeah, I agree. I mean, they point out the short span of our lives, don't they?
They do. I mean, it's interesting you talk about, you know, childhood amongst nature, but you grew up in London.
I don't know. I have this argument with people all the time about kind of suburban London childhood. Well, my parents were very militant, so we got in the car every weekend and immediately it was off to country, National Trust property, and then pub lunch. That was the sort of standard weekend out for us.
Dragged.
Oh yeah, we hated it, of course. Yeah, I mean, I'm not that much of a freak. You know, I got Stockholm syndrome eventually and started to enjoy it, and then now that's how multi-generational trauma works. I now inflict that upon my kids, but that's a whole separate story. But no, I hated it, obviously. I know people in the countryside who say you live in the countryside and then neglect to actually go out into said countryside. Yeah. Sort of that, just being in it for some reason gives you a sense that you're getting enough green space. And I think when you live in London in a pretty urban environment, there's an onus on getting out and properly getting dirt under your fingernails on the weekend. So I think in a weird way, Mum and Dad, I think we went on more walks in the countryside and more adventures than I think maybe my kids do. I live in the countryside now, and I often think, actually, sometimes I do think I fall into that category. I'm a bit lazy, and my kids maybe could use a bit of forced marching in the rain in November through the New Forest.
Do you think it's changed any? I mean, there's a lot of the youth are clearly very vocal about their concerns for the environment. Do you think that connects them to them going, oh, well, I want to be out actually and walking around, or is it much more a political thing? Do you see a change from when you were a kid to how your kids behave and their relationship to the natural world?
Yeah, that's weird. I think there's no more the forest schools, the wildwood schools are really good. So my kids have done that. I don't know. My kids are pretty outdoorsy really, but they're quite young. I don't. It's a really good question. I don't know the answer, but I think there's a lot of competition for kids' time now. And I think boredom was quite a good driver of getting people outside and just walking. And I don't think kids are bored anymore because they've got the entire sum total of the world's creative output and a machine in their pocket at all times. So it's definitely, you don't get that kind of famous five, oh, we're so bored in the house, let's go out and play in a stream. So I'm not sure that is true. But I guess if you look at the experiments that are being done around the UK of rewilding, they're proving very popular as places where people want to go, either for weekends or to stay over. And it's now emerging there might actually be more, for landowners, there might be more money in providing green and wild spaces for city folk than there might actually be in creating food for them. So that hopefully is a positive development.
So you started a new history channel, which is quite a big thing. It's called what?
History Hit TV. It's a very posh word for a website, but yeah, it's a channel. So it's gone pretty well. We've got tens of thousands of subscribers and all paying us a small amount every month to watch history shows that they watch on demand. They stream them to their houses and TVs and laptops and all that kind of stuff.
So that's quite a brave thing to do. I mean, you're a very successful, but effectively a jobbing presenter. Now you're a media owner. That sort of thing doesn't happen quickly, and it's a brave thing to do.
Well, I've got grey hairs to show for it. I'll tell you, it was a savage thing to do, and I often thought, what on earth am I doing here? And I wasn't suited to it very good. I'm not a particularly good or clever business person. But I felt something I had to do because I just felt a job that had been so wonderful in my 20s and 30s, which was being a kind of enthusiastic, cheerful, gun for hire history presenter. Lots of ideas, lots of fun projects going off around the world and getting the BBC to allow me to do things. But ultimately it was unsustainable. I didn't see a way that I could build a real life doing that, because I was always at the beck and call of people and falling out of favour, quite right, understandably. I fell into favour, I could fall out of favour. So I had to take some more control. And so I decided to do this thing. It's been quite a journey.
And I mean, apart from it, whatever the commercial side of it is, has it given you a new editorial freedom that you haven't found in traditional media?
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. I get emails like you do, social media, going, I've got a good story over here. I think I might have found the Battle of Brunanburh, 10th century battle which Athelstan defeated a great coalition of his enemies up in the northwest of England, or perhaps the northwest of England. So these local metal detectors think they found the battle. Now, in the old days, I had to trog round to the various broadcasters, and they'd be like, don't think so, not really up for this. And we could do it, but only if you're wearing bathing suits, or whatever funny Alan Partridge skits you might have seen. Now I just go, I'll be there with the crew on Monday. See you on Monday, just turn up. Because I know that the subscribers that I've got just love history, and they'll buy that, because I know that, because if they found me on a weird corner of the internet, these people are keen on history. Right. They could be anywhere else in the world, and they've, thank God, chosen to inhabit this little corner of the world with me. So I know that they're interested in the Battle of Brunanburh if it's been discovered. I know they're going to be fascinated by a special tour of HMS Victory by one of the great historians of Nelson. I know that they'll be fascinated by the female African-American activists that helped to push social and political and economic civil rights in the 1920s. Like, you just know, because that's what history fans love.
You talked about you liking to go for forest walks, and you can see the history and think what happened under those branches. But it sounds quite an intellectual sort of connection. That I don't want to force you to go. You're a big tree hugger, and you feel the earth's vibes or anything. But what what is your connection there? Is it just the history, or is there something different?
No, you're absolutely right to identify that. Like, I think it's not an intellectual exercise. So I now, the nice thing about getting old is that you start to really learn about yourself, don't you? And so I have now learnt over the last 5 years, in your late 30s and early 40s, so for the first time I experienced things that, luckily not a mental illness, but things that were, mentally disquieting. I started to have to think about wellness a bit more. Till 35, I never had to think about my mental and physical wellness a day in my life. I was just blessed and lucky, and liked running around, and work kept me busy, and that kept me healthy. And then suddenly I was like, okay, what's the point of all this? What's going on? And I developed some anxiety around work. You have kids, you have a lack of sleep, anxiety around it. And I started to realise at that point that the woods were a place of extraordinary healing and balm and importance to me and my wellness. And so, no, I'm not walking through these woods now thinking about the oak trees around us that might have been useful for the construction of Nelson's Navy in the late 18th and early 19th century, although occasionally I see a branch and think that would make a good, that would be a good part of a ship's hull. But no, I'm mostly just being really happy that I'm in the woods and I'm regenerating, and so I'm now a tree hugger. I'm very proud tree hugger, and that is as a result of the changes and the growth that I've been through over the last 5 or 10 years, I guess.
Do you think, when you say you found some comfort in that, was that almost accidental? Was that an obvious place for you to go, or did you just happen to go for a walk and then feel, God, this is quite good? Did someone say, look, you should get out?
I've always been outdoorsy from. Oh yeah. So I've always been outdoorsy from childhood. And I worked when I was 19, 20, had a summer job in the Canadian Rocky Mountains, hiking and just living an extraordinary life out in the most beautiful place in the world, which are the Canadian Rockies, the backcountry lodges there, which you can only hike into. And I washed dishes and chambermaid in those places and hiked all day. So I've always known, it's always been there. So when I was traveling a lot in the world, it's a wonderful thing, technologies we're going through a phase of being very worried about what our technology is doing to us now, but when Google Maps was invented on phones, I suddenly just went, hold on, and I'd be in Hong Kong or I'd be in Mexico City and I'd have jet lag and I'd wake up. Now, previously you would sort of drink through it, party through it, all the film crew, you're having a great time, it's an adventure, it's a real... And then you got a bit older and I was thinking, I don't really want to do that anymore. So I'd wake up at 4 a.m. or finish filming at 2 p.m. before I'd travelled or something. And then you look at your Google Maps, you just find the nearest bit of green space and just go and walk in. I found myself doing that completely accidentally. And I realised I just needed some more trees in my life, basically. Right. And technology enabled me to do that. So in some places you could go for these mad walks. I'd set off at 3 a.m. with jet lag. And by sort of 6 a.m, the crew would be like, right, we're filming now, where are you? And then the other technology, a little wonderful person in an Uber would turn up and take you to, and you wouldn't have to speak. It was unbelievable. No money, no linguistic nightmares. So technology transformed that. So now my go-to thing when I'm traveling is, rather than to go out drinking with the crew to get over the jet lag, I'll just go, oh, it's all right, guys, we're filming near this weird forest. I'll just walk back through the forest, and if I can't make it back to the hotel, I'll just get an Uber or whatever. So I've been able to connect a lot more on trips. So yeah, it was always there. My parents showed me the way. I sort of ignored it for a few years in my 20s and stuff, and then it was very easy to come back to. It felt very obvious. It felt like an obvious place to go back to.
There's a lot of concern around the environment and a lot of panic around it. Do you feel panicked about the environment? Are you optimistic, pessimistic? What do you think of the future?
I veer around. I'm very pessimistic. As someone who's not an expert, I can get very pessimistic because I don't understand what's happening. Sometimes I find I think the recent history of humans overcoming astonishingly large problems in science and engineering. Most recently, we've seen the development of a vaccine for COVID in the space of 10 months, where we were absolutely assured that it would take 3 or 4 years. And therefore, what gives me completely uninformed, what gives me a sense of optimism is humans managed to put someone on the moon about 50 years after flying canvas and string biplanes across the English Channel was about the limit of aviation ability, and therefore we now see solar energy as beating its projections. It's become the cheapest energy in the history of the human race to produce. It does make me think that we could stem, if not reverse, the emission of carbon into our atmosphere, right? So I have days. So you have days and you're very pessimistic, and then you do think about those kind of things and think, well, maybe we could pull this off. Maybe we get out of jail on this one. If you're able to generate effectively unlimited cheap energy in hot places around the world, then that's going to change. All bets are off, right? That could change everything. Just crossing a stream now, and I've been out walking these streams with experts from Southampton Uni, and they've had fascinating sort of how we reimagine, rethink about our countryside is so interesting, because traditionally a lot of drainage, like the Victorians cut straight deep drains in the New Forest to replace these streams, because then there was less flooding and you could put more trees in and harvest more, make it more useful, productive. And of course we realised that was just catastrophic, and so they're putting these streams back in now, and one of the ways is they have to let trees fall in them to provide sort of dams that then burst and form oxbow lakes, all the natural processes. And this one looks nice and windy. This is a good one. But I love it. And apparently a lot of local entrenched interest, because it's the way it's been done, people were very upset by that, including remarkably fishermen who, even though scientists are like, guys, fish, newsflash, want a kind of slow running stream with lots of dead pools in it and bits they can rest and hide underneath roots, and then when they gather their strength they jump up the next bit of rapids, and amazingly they don't want a massive straight cut artificial drainage ditch.
Dog come to visit us, fantastic. Yeah, it's just pay us any attention at all. You've taken me on this great walk, it's fantastic, in a loop, so you've taken me back to my car. I know you're not a tree expert. What would you say this landscape means to you? You've chosen to live here. You didn't grow up here, so this is a choice. So what has attracted you to this, and what does it mean to you?
What this landscape means to me, it's a historic landscape, so it's time hallowed, so you're not living in some new build development that could so easily be built on sand. You don't know if people are going to thrive and enjoy living in those places. Whereas when you're here, there are historic communities here. There are people that have been here for generations. You know this is a place where people can thrive and be happy. You know it's a place where you personally will benefit enormously from being physically fit, walking, striding out through this forest. You'll be mentally well, because we know for a fact that trees and green spaces and nature is a balm for our troubled, technologically addled minds. And you know it's a great place for kids, because as a parent, where they can grow up, they can get mud under their fingernails, they can get the microbes in to make sure their immune systems are powerful, they can be physically fit, they can let their imaginations run free. So for all of those reasons, this is a special and nurturing landscape.
Well, that was Dan Snow taking me on one of his favourite woodland walks in the New Forest. And of course you can follow us by going to those map coordinates I gave you right at the beginning of this podcast. Do remember, his podcast is called History Hit, so do have a listen to that. And remember that one of the things that's special, I think, about this podcast is that you can take part. So if you've got a favourite woodland walk, you can either send me a small audio clip of your walk or just email us in all about it, and we'll include you in a future podcast. The details about how to contact us or how to send us those audio clips you can just record on your mobile phone, just coming up in a moment. Till next time, take care.
Thank you for listening to the Woodland Trust Woodland Walks with Adam Shaw. Join us next month when Adam will be taking another walk in the company of Woodland Trust staff, partners and volunteers. Don't forget to subscribe to the series on iTunes or wherever you're listening to us, and do give us a review and a rating. And why not send us a recording of your favourite woodland walk to be included in a future podcast? Keep it to a maximum of 5 minutes, and please tell us what makes your woodland walk special. Or send us an email with details of your favourite walk and what makes it special to you. Send any audio files to podcast@woodlandtrust.org.uk. We look forward to hearing from you.